You're welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis show. And here on Newsfile, we put Ghana first. Bank of Africa is pleased to announce to you that they have officially opened their new head office located at the first floor of Block A and B of the new Octagon building close to the Mervyn Peak Hotel. The new ultra-modern head office branch complements the Bolgawa Airport City, Opera Square, Teshinungwa, and Accra Central branches that were added to the bank in 2016. Visit any of the 26 branches across the country to experience their excellent customer service in a comfortable and serene environment. For further inquiries, you can call Bank of Africa on 0302 249690. That moment when you can download and stream your favorite action movie within seconds. Make that seamless video call with Bay without buffering, and all you wanted with your internet, watching television series without suffering any interruptions. Everybody loves the internet for one reason or the other. It could be just for streaming movies or gaming, or for music, and for learning and staying in touch with family, even for doing business. You know, MTN 4G gives you a better internet experience. 4G is life. So go on, get yourself a 4G device today and experience the power of MTN's ultra-fast and stable 4G network, the first mobile 4G network in Ghana. As a farmer, landscaper, or gardener, what has been your bother or headache over the years? If it's been poor seasonal yields over the period, post-harvest losses due to short shelf life of your produce, then here is the time to stop all of that. You need ACAP compost fertilizer, which is an organic fertilizer made from pure organic materials such as food and farm waste decomposed naturally into humans, very suitable for every agriculture purpose. ACAP compost fertilizer is available in all leading agro input dealers and distributors across the country. For inquiries, contact 026 40 781, 026 40 781. Thank you very much for staying with us here on Newsfile. Now, let's share some of the messages that you have been sending in since we started the show. So what have you been saying? Let me bring those messages, particularly on the issues that we have just discussed. For those of you who have sent about the other issues we are yet to discuss, you have to wait until we touch on those issues and then we share your message as well. Now, okay, it looks like people are in a hurry for the other issues we have to discuss rather than what we have already discussed. Okay, so Kweku Esiedu says that just a quick one on the issue of suicide. Did you know that there is no guidance and counseling unit at the basic and junior high level of education? So the mindset created from the beginning is those who fall victim have no option. Oh, that's serious, really. But I think it doesn't apply to everywhere. Then you say Safiano, Fusaini Safiano, you say that there must be something wrong somewhere and the police, security personnel and the general public has to be alert and vigilant. The incidents of the many suicides are worrying, more especially the circumstances surrounding it and the locations. University authorities must equally stand on their feet to curb the unfortunate menace that is sending shivers down the spine of parents. Say no to suicide. That's your hashtag. Paul Heheyi says that the real corruption is among the government officials and public servants. The corruption at the police service is negligible. Okay, I suppose this is on my take, I suppose. Then, okay. Right. I've got a couple of them here also. Okay, I've seen that you sent it here, you sent it here as well. Musa Abato in Kumasi says that lately it's becoming scary. More importantly, when it has to do with our universities, We must establish counseling sections in our educational system, starting from SHS, to enable the students to go to series of counseling. I believe it will minimize the unprecedented level of suicide that we are witnessing in the country. Gorazo in the UK, in Kent, says that the suicides break my heart. Times are changing and changing very fast too. Almost gone are the days when parents dedicated time to train and bring up a child properly. But in Ghana now, like it is in the UK, father and mother are also busy and can barely take notice of any changes in the behavior of their children. Prince Chum, writing from Chikasi, is that it? Ukraine, says that it's unfortunate that sometimes our parents contribute to our frustrations. After school, they begin to put so much pressure on us to find job, even when we try so much harder but to no avail, especially when they see that a friend's child has gotten a job and they begin to compare. It's as if they become fed up taking care of you. They need to be advised that they also contribute to our frustration. Musa, but I will not read your second message. Give someone opportunity. Let's move on to who? Benjamin in London says, it is time the immigration service in Ghana gets tough with visa and work permit to those who come into our country, like the Home Office here in the UK. Well, we are told that these are Ghanaians, so immigration is out of the question there. Kwabena in Tema says, I am not being nationalistic, but it is a fact that people from the Middle East do not respect people from our part of the world. They abuse them in so many ways in all walks of life. Thank you for all of those messages. I've just seen that you have quite a lot of them also on the Facebook wall, but we'll share them as we continue with the show. Let's now settle for the questions of suspected, or is it suspected? He's actually been accused. The president is accused of seeking to distort the history of this country by the address that he provided on the 60th birthday of the country. Now, let's hear the president and bits of what he had to say, which has brought us to this question.
It is worth mentioning some of the names of the members of the society because, unfortunately, we do not often acknowledge their role. John Mensah Saba, Joseph Casely Hayford, J.W. Say, J.P. Brown, and their colleagues who organized the chiefs and people against the Crown Lands Bill and forced the colonial authorities to retreat. Saba began the tradition of the Ghanaian lawyer as a nationalist. This was probably one of the most dramatic interventions in the colonial history of our country. 120 years after the event, its significance might be lost on us. But we would appreciate its importance if we consider that the very same objectives of the Crown Lands Bill were introduced at the same time and became law in countries like Kenya, Zimbabwe, Zambia, and some other British colonies around Africa, and changed the course of their history. The next significant event in the struggle occurred on 4th August 1947, exactly 50 years later to the day of the formation of the Aborigines Rights Protection Society, when a group of nationalists gathered in Salpon for the launch of the United Gold Coast Convention, the UGCC, the first political party in our country. The founders of the UGCC then met to demand independence from the British, and 70 years after that event, one still marvels at the clarity of thought and the passion that they displayed. Some of the names of that momentous day have survived in our written history and folklore. 5 of them are on our Ghanaian currency: Joseph Boache Dankwa, Emmanuel Obeche Bilanti, William Oforiatta, Ebenezer Akwaje, and Edward Akufo Addo. Kwame Nkrumah, the 6th of the big currency on the currency, the big 6 on the currency, was to join them later. I pay homage to Ephraim Amu, Tata Amu, as he was fondly called. He was the composer of what easily passes as our unofficial national anthem, Yeya Sasieni. Is there a Ghanaian amongst us today who can hear or sing that song in whichever language without being moved? Ephraim Amu stood alone most of the time against what he saw as cultural domination. You did not have to wear a European cut suit to be a scholar. I pay homage today to Kwejia Agre. He reminded us we were eagles that should soar and not be timid, domesticated birds. I pay homage to Philip Beho, the composer of our national anthem, Theodosia Oko, the designer of our national flag, and Amon Kote, the designer of our coat of arms. I pay homage to Kofi Antobam, the artist who first put Ghanaian artists on the map. I pay homage to Saka Akwe, the poet, writer, sculptor, and musician who wrote the first African folklore, The Lost Fisherman. I pay homage to J.A. Brymer, the Gonja scholar and statesman who wrote insightful publications about the Gonja people. I pay homage to the poet Apalu, who immortalized the philosophy and music of the Ewe language. I pay homage to E.T. Manson, King Bruce, Jerry Hansen, and the others who popularized high life, which has become an enduring identity of Ghanaian music.
So the real question is, what was inaccurate about what the president said? The CPP has been at his back. The CPP's Kader Abdul Rauf says Nana Akufo Addo clearly tweaked Ghana's history to please his ancestry. He said, quote, "We as a party can see a deliberate attempt by the president not only to minimize the role of Kwame Nkrumah in the independence struggle of the country, but also to take up arms against the history of our country because, for example, as a party, we have argued that yes, it doesn't take one single individual to win independence for people. It must take the efforts and sacrifice of people. But in line with principles of history, it took one person's effort to climax several years of the people's struggle. And in the case of Ghana, Kwame Nkrumah assumed that role. And any attempt to minimize or deny Kwame Nkrumah this role is most regrettable," unquote. Prof, my question is, what did President Akufo Addo say that was inaccurate?
Thank you very much, Samson. I have had time to listen to the tape, and then also...
This is your comfort zone.
Yeah, to listen to the tape or the clip, and then also I've had time to read the speech itself in a print form. And a careful perusal of the write-up tells me right away that he never distorted any history of Ghana.
He did not?
He did not distort any history of Ghana. You see, history or histories, let me say histories, are written from perspectives. So the president sought to, on this occasion, write his speech from nationalist perspective. And those people who put up resistance, either cultural resistance, political, social, or economic resistance against foreign domination. That was exactly what the president sought to do. Even though in some places, his history is also about facts and their interpretations. Even though some of the interpretations the president gave at some points or some places of his speech are not the right interpretation I will give. He gave them political interpretation, but I will not give them as a historian.
You give us an example.
I'm going to give you an example.
Okay.
You give me time. As a historian, I will not give those political interpretations.
Okay.
One is his claim to the fact that the Bond of 1844 marked the beginning of colonization of Ghana. That is the Eurocentric view. Those Europeans who write about colonialism and about African history will tell you that our colonization started from that time. That is not true. At that time, Ashanti was independent. The northern territories, the Gonja, the Dagombes, were even under Ashanti dominion. And other parts, even it was in 1869 that Ashanti make a thrust into what became known as the Klepi area or the Everdomi area in Volta region. Do you get me? And it was after 1874 that after the Segrenti War, when the British sent expedition to Ashanti and crushed Ashanti and burned Kumasi, that the Gonjas and the Dagombes and those in the northern part of Ghana asserted their independence, including those in the Volta region that Ashanti had held sway over for some period of time. But we Africanist historians, to interpret the colonization of Ghana from 1874, that is in August 1874, that was when the British turned the forts and castles of and its immediate hinterlands of Her Majesty's castles into crown colonies and protectorates. At this period, Ashanti was still independent. The northern territories that had asserted their independence of Ashanti were also independent. Earlier on, in March 1874, Ashanti, the British had extended their rule to Anglo, and then some of the southern Volta region states like Peki, then also the North and South Tongue area. These places became part of Ashanti, of the British Crown colony. Now, it was in 1896 that the British then invaded Kumasi again, arrested Prempeh I, sent him to Seychelles on the pretext that he had failed to pay the war indemnity imposed on him on Ashanti at the Treaty of Omana, and then exiled him to first Elmina, to Cape Coast, and then eventually to Sierra Leone, and eventually to Seychelles Island. So even at that time, Ashanti was declared as a protectorate, and then he stationed Donald Stewart as a resident. Okay. It was during this period, between 1896 and 1900, that they built the fort, which is now a military castle or fort in Kumasi. It's a museum around the High Court post office area. Now, in 1900, Yasantua uprising occurred. And it was after the uprising when the British defeated Ashanti, and by order in council, by the signal defeat of Ashanti, the British deemed Ashanti as a conquered territory. And then in 1902, the Northern Territories, through a series of treaties that it had or its British agents had signed with the what do you call it, with the chiefs in the Northern Territories, declared the place British protectorate. So now, at this time, by 1902, we had the Gold Coast colony, we had Ashanti and its dependencies of Ashanti, and then the Northern Territories. So there, if the president was saying that, from what the exposition I've given, if the president was saying that our colonization started from 1844, the Bond of 1844, I will not agree with that. That is where I say that his interpretation is not right so far as historians are concerned, or Africanist historians.
So is it really an interpretation, or is an inaccuracy that you should be pointing to?
Okay, I told you at the beginning that
there was nothing inaccurate about what he said.
I told you that you have Africanist historians and then Eurocentric view, that's those Europeans. So those Europeans, he was using the Eurocentric interpretation, but the Africanists, you see, they try to write our history.
Are you saying that you would not say that this was deliberate to sort of minimize Nkrumah? Is that the case?
No, it wasn't deliberate.
For as long as you are concerned, this is the Eurocentric point of view
with
and he's
respect
allowed to go that way.
To go that way. But then, if you are a historian, a trained historian, or a student of history, you'll be told this. I teach this course. This is a course I teach at the postgraduate level.
Okay.
And Ghana in the 20th century, social and economic history.
Okay.
I teach my students. I tell them this.
Right.
Do you get me?
Right.
And everybody will tell you. Every Africanist historian will tell you this. Then you come to the ARPS, that's Aborigines Right Protection Society. He paid homage to those people for fighting against the Crown Land Bill. These people were not, that's John Mensah Saba, Castle Hayford, J.W. Sage, J.P. Brown, and their colleagues. They were not fighting against political reforms, but against social reform. The Crown Land Bill was a social issue. It wasn't a political issue. Okay. Even though the president is trying to say that that is when our resistance started against European, British colonial rule started. But I will not see it as a political or interpret it to mean as a political resistance, but rather a social resistance. Now you go on to the, he also mentioned the others. And in relation to that, that you talk about what happened in Zambia, South Africa, and Zimbabwe. There is true. What these people did, it was true, and it was also good for the president to pay homage to these people for their heroic effort. Otherwise, the same fate that befell the people of Zimbabwe, the people of Zambia, and Kenya would have befallen us. So the president was right. And as I indicated earlier, he was writing, or he wrote his speech from nationalist perspective or viewpoint. So because he wrote his speech from nationalist perspective, he was trying to pay homage or tribute to everybody who contributed to the nationalist struggle. Okay. So he had not faulted in any way, and he had also not distorted any facts, because these are facts, historical facts, that nobody can controvert. Okay. Yeah. So moving on. Then you also come to the Castle Hayford and Thomas Horton Mills. They forming the National Congress of British West Africa with their colleagues from the British colonies or dependencies in West Africa, that's from Gambia, Sierra Leone, and Nigeria. That was the first attempt at what Pan-Africanism. And can anybody say that what the president mentioned here, that what they did was meant to promote nationalism, Pan-Africanism, was a distortion of history? Nobody can controvert that. It's a matter of fact. Do you get me? But here, what I will not agree with the president is the fact that here too, he saw it as, or he interpreted it to be a political struggle. Even though there was an element of it which bordered on politics. It led to constitutional reform, and after that, we saw the appointment of Buzia and A.L. Addo. That was Georgesburg's constitution. So there was a political element in it, but it was more of social, because most of the reforms that came out of the National Congress of British West Africa agitation were building of Kolebu, establishment of Achimota School, and then some of the trade schools at Swansea, the trade school at first Yendi, and then later to Tamale, Asante Mampon, and other places. So to me, as a historian, I see it more as what? Social than political, even though it had a bit of political dimension. Then you come to the formation of, and the ARPS and the National Congress of British West Africa are seen as more of, these people are seen as proto-nationalists, but not the nationalists themselves. That's how historians, some commentators see them. But the real nationalists, the political nationalists, those who agitated for the political independence of Ghana, are those who started after the World War I. And we have these people, that is United Gold Coast Convention. Then Nkrumah was brought in. And the president made allusion to the people who founded the National Congress of the United Gold Coast Convention, UGCC. Indeed, Osagyefo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah was not a founding member. It was formed, and later he was brought in as the secretary. And because these people were doing part-time politics, those who brought him, Akwaje, JB Dankwa, Pargrand, Oforiata, and others, Akufo Addo and others were doing part-time politics because they were professionals, either businessmen or
so they
were
paid
lawyers.
him to do it
So
as
they
a
paid him to
permanent
do it.
job.
But because of the organizational ability, skills, and forward-looking looking of Osagyefo, he was a visionary because in this world you can succeed if you're a visionary, if you're a strategist. He was a strategist, and he took advantage of it, and he endeared himself to the people, to the Goku. I'm not an Nkrumahist, but in fact, I always associate myself with Nkrumah. I like most of the things that he did. When I was contesting for UTAC presidency, somebody met me, that was 2 years ago, and said that I should be careful, otherwise I won't win. I said, let me tell you, I am a historian. I've read about Osagyefo Dr. Nkrumah and his policies. I've adopted them. That's what I'm going to use to win my elections. And indeed, I won with 80% vote. I got 80%, while my competitor got 20%. So I admire him for what he did. I don't think he has distorted, Nana or the president of this republic, distorted history. What he stated were matter of fact.
Did he seek to minimize him in the role he played?
I've told you, if you look at the script carefully, you go to the point.
So you quickly answer that, then I'll take some other views and come back to you later.
People were expecting him to pay growing tribute, emphasize more, pay more attention. The focus should be more on the role of Osagyefo Dr. Nkrumah. But I've told you right from the onset that histories are written from perspectives. Granted that this is a history that Nana was writing. And if you look at how he mentions so many people, there are a lot of names he mentioned over here that I've never heard, especially the two market women who founded Osagyefo and the UGCC. I've never heard about them. It's the first time, and this time I'm going to use it in. I have a book, not a book. I have a chapter in this book.
Which is by yourself?
Not by myself.
Okay.
I am a contributor of a chapter.
Okay.
Kwame Nkrumah, 1900 to 1972, a controversial African visionary, edited by Bieland and Christoph Mark in Germany. I and a colleague of mine wrote a chapter, but we look at the political opposition, but you start from the beginning to the end. We didn't know of this.
Okay.
So later on, if I want to review it,
right.
I will incorporate all this.
I want to come to Roxanne, but before I do so, I want you to answer directly to this.
Yeah.
We have had an issue about the founders, either S before the apostrophe or apostrophe before the S. Which one should it be? Should the apostrophe come after the S or before the S?
It should come after the S.
After the S.
After the S.
Okay, collective.
Because
Thank you.
all of them contributed.
Thank you. Yes, Roxanne, what do you say?
Yes, this is a controversial topic, and it is good because it will help everybody to understand the issues. I disagree with Prof when he says that the bond of 1844, Nana's reference to the European perspective that the bond of 1844 commenced the beginning of colonization of Gold Coast. You can say it formalized it because it had begun about 100 years before. Now, for instance, when you go to my hometown in Way, my great-great-great-great-grandfather lost his land to the Dutch colonists who had acquired a vast area, you know, stretching from Jita all the way to, there are two accounts. Some say to present-day St. Paul's, where it is in Denu. Others say up to Juje, for purposes of the construction of what we call Fort Prinsenstein in 1784. When they constructed Fort Prinsenstein in 1784, they also constructed a lighthouse in Way, which is still being used by Gapoha. It's a very formidable structure and it's still existing. So when the Danes were leaving, then they sold that area to the British, and the accounts are there. That is how come that area of the whole of Anglo and southern Volta region had always been part of the British colony. So it is not correct that the Bond of 1844 commenced the European colonization of.
So are you agreeing with me, or you are disagreeing with me?
He's agreeing with you.
You know,
You are agreeing with me?
yes, to the extent that the Bond formalized it. The Bond made it official, because at that time it was not official.
But I don't want to interrupt you, but don't forget that at that time, by 1844, the Dutch, the Danes were all in the Gold Coast. So how can you then anybody say that at this time, when the other European countries were here trading with us, the Danes were at Christiansborg, they had not left. They left around 1862, and then the 1860 or some 50 or thereabout, and then the Dutch left in 1872. How then can you say that? Why can you then say that at this period, when there were 3 European nations along the coast, trading along the coast of what is now Ghana, 3 European countries trading along the coast, how then would we say that this time the British had started colonizing us? They have not started colonizing us.
That is the point I'm making, that they formalized the relationship with the Gold Coast.
But it was not colonization. That is the point I want you to understand.
It was colonization. If you read, see, it was a colonization that took the form of trading. Okay, so let's make progress. 20 years down the line, political agitation had begun. So there too, I disagree with him that some of the agitations were more social or socio-cultural or commercial and not political. It was political, to the extent that in 1864, Kuntum Blankson had to be appointed as a member of the Legislative Council. He was a merchant. In those days, it was the merchants, the natives who had relationship with the whites and were benefiting from their trading activities, and therefore became merchants like middlemen. Yeah. So it was the merchants who were having opportunity, but it was a political agitation that they needed representation in the Legislative Council. The improvement came down the line, and between that period and about the 1870s and 1880s, it picked up to the extent that another political decision was to be made. That was how come Saba and his scholars, like Nana mentioned, the president mentioned, established the Aborigines Rights Protection Society. He used a legal means to thwart a political decision. And it was good, because if that bill had been passed, the whole of the lands that were in their own language that were unoccupied would have been annexed by the crown. That was how come in law, you and I know, the doctrine of no unoccupied lands in Ghana was propounded. That every land in Ghana, whether a vacant land or occupying land, had an owner. Incumbent. You know, it was incumbent, because every land, every territory, every family knew the family or the person with whom they shared their bounds. So you can't go to Shire Hills and say, because it's a vast open area, the owners cannot be found. And he used a legal, you know, he used his law, his knowledge in the law, to defeat the passage of that bill. And he succeeded, because, like it was recounted, it was introduced in Eastern and Southern Africa, and because they couldn't canvass some of these arguments, the law was passed, and their lands went into the hands of Europeans for over 100 years. Now, fast forward. It was because of such political agitations that, for instance, led to the Yasantua uprising. And the Yasantua uprising, yes, they must have lost the war, but it brought awareness, it brought awakening, to the extent that also representation to the Legislative Council was increased. So much so that even chiefs, Togbe Sri and Anasa of Oriata, had representation in the Legislative Council from that time till about the 1940s. It led to the promulgation of the Clifford Constitution, which was an improvement from the earlier one, from 1916 up to the 1920s. Then the Second World War came. Now, well, at the end of the First World War, it also brought some level of awareness. NCBWA, West African Students Union, the war, you see, the political agitation was gathering pace. It was gathering pace. There were improvements. Otherwise, how could we have had Kolebu? It was due to agitation. You see, how could we have had Achimota? It was due to agitation. So the more they agitated, the more improvement came, until it gathered pace in the 30s. It gathered pace just after the war. And the war sped up the process. And then Nkrumah had then traveled to Nigeria to see his uncle, got some money, and went out to go and study, to go and prepare himself for the task ahead. So can never be true. And throughout his study, he was preparing, he was taking part in processes that were calling for agitation, for political transformation and self-rule in most parts of Africa. Even in Europe, when he left America and came to Europe, you recall the famous Manchester Conference. So he had always been preparing himself. And so when he got the opportunity and came and saw that the strategy that was being deployed was no one that could speed up the process the way he intended it, he broke away. And indeed, by 1951, he had gathered pace and he won the election. Now,
when you say the strategy, you are referring to what we know too well, that he was for self-government now and they were for self-government within the nearest possible time. But you would be reminded that self-government now had existed before his appearance, and that the UGCC actually belonged to that school before they had to change their position to self-government within the nearest possible time.
It was because they had become comfortable. You understand? They had become comfortable. And so they thought that, well, these people, yes, we want self-rule, self-governance, but let's do it methodically. And would have been in the Zimbabwe situation in the 80s. Would have been
Nkrumah, let's do it radically.
Would have been the situation of the Namibians. You understand? But he wanted it now, so that we get rid of them.
Okay.
That we take control of our destiny.
Okay. So to the main issue, what did the president take away from Nkrumah with his speech?
You see, if you look at a paragraph from his speech, if I may.
And while you are at that, I would also like you eventually to also tell us whether you belong to Founders, the apostrophe before the S or after the S, Founders Day. Which one should it be?
It has to be S apostrophe. You understand? It has to be Founders, Founder apostrophe S.
Okay, so that it is only Kwame Nkrumah.
Yes, and I'll explain why.
Will that be fair to the history?
It will be fair. Otherwise,
would that be fair to the history of the struggle?
Yes. You see, when you are in the final year in any class, there can always be one person who become a school prefect. All of you cannot be school prefects. All of you, like in this country, all of us cannot be presidents. I take the country as persons who have agitated, but it's only one person who can be regarded as the arrowhead. And I think it's Nkrumah who deserves that title because of the enormity of the work that he put in within the short period of time.
You equate that to a situation of from the scratch where people are in a process of self-determination to want to carve a country for themselves. And I don't want to use the Western Togoland example, but in that example, for example, if they were successful with it, will it be credited? Is it fair to credit it to only one person who is the figurehead as the leadership, or it should be credited to all of those who were arrested? Should it be only one or all those who are arrested?
I'll come to that in a jiffy. It's a topic we'll discuss, isn't it? So
no, but it's an example that I think can give an illustration to whether or not it is fair
Otherwise,
to
if
make
I do
it a singular Founders Day or Founders Day collective.
I will explain that.
Okay.
Now, for instance, he says that in the paragraph is not numbered, but he says here that our first president, Kwame Nkrumah, delivered his famous, I think it's okay. It says, Danko captured the mood of the time and set our country on the path to independence. 4th August is truly a sacred and seminal day in the annals of the Ghanaian people. The unfolding of the story is well known. He gave a lot of details to that eventful day in South Pond. But he is not willing to give further details after that. He's telling
You think
us
that's
that
deliberate, right?
it is. And I like the way Prof said perspectives. When you assume certain perspectives, it will affect your narrative of the facts also. Like the way the Europeans use a certain perspectives to narrate the history of Africa.
Okay.
So perspectives is key.
All right. Now let's go to Kokubako. And you know he's also a historian in his own right. And when it comes to this very sensitive issue, I would like to say he's more CPP than Ghanaian. Let's hear him.
Or the entity itself.
Is that intimidation?
Let's hear you.
What a preemptive strike. But see, I've read the president's speech. Yes, in terms of the recollection, the names mentioned, those he paid homage to, and all those things. I don't see anything fundamentally wrong. Those are factual recollections, so the narrative is okay. You know, my brother made, the name escapes me suddenly, but he made a very interesting point. Roxanne, yeah.
Yes. Roxanne Dafia Makbo.
As we proceed to do the analysis, yes, I can point to some areas that I thought there was exclusion and omission. Whether deliberate or not, I'm not prepared to deal with that, but the fact of the exclusion and omission could have its own significance when we look at how to compare the facts. But otherwise, it's good. See, Nkrumah himself, in his speech before Parliament, this was 12 November 1956, that serious motion he moved. This is what Nkrumah said. Mr. Speaker, when we stand on the verge of independence, it is only right that we should pay tribute to those who have made that independence possible. I have spoken in my speech of the very great part played by the Convention People's Party, but I and the party realize the debt we owe to the work which was done by other individuals and other parties.
This is Nkrumah speaking.
Yes. Though we have had deep political differences, it would be wrong if I did not also pay tribute to those who, while not agreeing with the Convention People's Party, have nevertheless made their contribution towards attaining independence. This is a recognition and acknowledgement by Nkrumah that others did play a role. It was not giving the CPP an exclusive, absolutist credit. The difference is that no names were mentioned. That's a matter of style. President Akufo Addo, and if checked.
Is it really a matter of style of clearly being unfair and like those his critics will say this was an opportunist?
You are entitled to that opinion. I don't share that. President Kufuor's 50th anniversary, if you read his speech, a copy of which I have here, he mentioned some names, about 8 or 9 from the UP side or the UGC side, and about 8 or 9 from the CPP side. That's a matter of style.
Okay.
Now, the problem is this, and one has to be very brutally frank about some of these things. You see, the last phase, this whole controversy we are having, is because of what transpired for me, what I call the final phase of the decolonization process between 1947 and 1957. Everything the president said, all those mentioned, my professor says social, economic, cultural, they are all interrelated. Of course, the political is the supreme one, but all those things combined to give us a certain level of consciousness in order to try and disentangle ourselves from the colonial yoke. So they are all part of it. President Akufo Addo had every right to mention all those names, like Kobna Bonny, Ne Kobna Bonny. Yes, you know, it wasn't a direct political agitation. We all know that. It was directed against the foreign merchant groups.
It was more economic.
Yes, but it ended up linking, raising people. Producer was a member of that boycott committee, if you remember, in the Ashanti region side. So, to be honest with you, it is the from 47 to 57 that I think as a people, we are here to reconcile ourselves with exactly what happened, who played which role, and how that role was played until we became independent in 1957. That's where the problem is. UGCC was formed, all right, we all know, and it's true. Nkrumah admits that the UGCC had an aim of securing independence for this country, of course, within the shortest possible time. The CPP was self-government now. But you see, so many things happen in between that space. I'll tell you, when the Watson Commission finished its job, and the Kose Committee, if I'm wrong, you can correct me, was put in place.
Yeah.
No formal invitation was extended to Nkrumah.
Yeah, that's true.
To become part of it. The other colleagues of the UGCC and other groups were part of it. That opened up the space for Nkrumah to have freedom of movement and maneuver. He had been taken out of that particular constitutional project. Of course, eventually he described the constitution that came out from it as bogus and fraudulent. But being a tactician of the highest order, a strategic mind with a vision, he said, look, I will not boycott the resultant processes. And that's why they took part in the 1951 election. And they won overwhelmingly.
29 out of 33.
Consistently, what happened, and this is what has happened to us, the decolonization process at that material period was trapped, if that's the right word to use, within competitive politics and elections. Each step that we took towards independence 57 was fought on issues contested through elections, competitive elections. 51, 54, 56, most crucially 56. The conduct, the actions of each side determined the primary role you were playing. Nkrumah did not proclaim independence on March 6, 1957 out of a vacuum. They were related to issues. What kind of constitution did we want? What kind of nation did we want, unitary or federal? What were the issues? When he moved the motion for Gold Coast independence, and the Hansard is here, 1956, 3rd August, when he moved it, the opposition were absent. And this was what they were supposed to vote for, the motion he moved, that this assembly do authorize the government of the Gold Coast to request Her Majesty's government in the United Kingdom as soon as practicable this year, that's 56, to procure the enactment by the United Kingdom Parliament of an act to provide for the independence of the Gold Coast as a sovereign nation, an independent state within the Commonwealth under the name of Ghana. This is 3rd August 1956. Vote 72-0. The 72 were the members of the Convention People's Party. The 0...
And they were in the majority.
Yes, but 72-0. This was an important motion on Gold Coast independence. Due to differences and ideological and political and other things, the other side were not part of this critical, most crucial process.
I hope the MPs and those who are here are taking note of how they use the boycott in the House of Parliament. Yeah. Because this boycott is such suicidal. Yeah, because now the history is being told, and as where this boycott sits, you know, people are right to use it.
The events after this is also critical.
See,
okay.
And then all these things happened. Okay. In the same 1956, in the wake of all these things, there were to and fro, people going to UK, coming back, arguments, debates, political agitation. So somehow they they were able to forge a certain level of compromise. And it was incumbent on the CPP government to come back to Parliament, the legislature, with revised constitutional proposals. The agitation was that, look, either unitary or federal, whatever it is, those federalists were asking for regional assemblies, a second chamber, that is a double-type parliament, double-decker parliament.
Bicameral.
They also, yes, exactly, that's a better way of putting it. Then they also wanted a council of state. They also wanted the police force to be regionalized. All these things are here. Now, to and fro, Nkrumah had to compromise somewhere along the line, and it was also based on British government's pressure, the Crown's pressure. So Nkrumah brought the revised constitutional processes to Parliament. The opposition took part in this debate vigorously, and they had fantastic debaters, make no mistake about that. Busia was there, Victor Wusu was there, Ara Ponsan was there, MK Apalu was there, Kobna Kesi was there, you know, solid guys. They were in the minority. But if you are honest, you study the text, the Hansard, you see that, yeah, these were formidable debaters. Joe Appiah particularly, incredible chap. So it wasn't a small thing here.
Because briefly, why did they boycott this very important motion on the 3rd?
To give you so many reasons. Not reasons that I don't think were valid or solid, but when we go through, I would like to give Ara Ponsan, he gave reasons for why they boycotted some of those things. But if you give me time, I'll find it and then we can.
Okay,
but
so you proceed.
Some substantive things.
Proceed with the next.
Now, this revised constitutional proposals were to accelerate the motion here. The British had agreed. Don't forget, there had been an earlier pledge by the British government that if new elections were held and a reasonable majority in Parliament were to move a motion for independence, they will accede to it. And that election was the 56th election. So the election had been held. It was held in July 56, and this is August, the first one I quoted. Now this one now is 12th November 1956, when the revised constitutional proposals were put before the House for debate. And they debated vigorously the question of the regional assemblies, second chamber, Council of State, regionalization of the police service, and all those things were debated vigorously. And the question of the name, just to give you a classic example of what I mean by the inconsistency, the incoherence, the inclarity of the opposition to Nkrumah, creating the situation in which we find ourselves today and asking, so who is the founder or who are the founders? To me, almost a needless question, needless controversy. But let me explain. Take the name of Ghana, the name Ghana. Records show that Dr. J.B. Danquah had done a great job, some research, and had come up with the name Ghana in many instances of his writings.
Right.
There's a letter, a basic, he wrote to the Watson Commission. They requested that let this nationalists bring names. This is the title of J.B. Danquah's paper to the commission. a basic constitution for Ghana land from his Yadom Chambers, P.O. Box 15, Accra, Gold Coast, dated 15th April 1948. He also published a newspaper called Ghana Statesman. M.K. Apalu was the editor. So here was somebody who the Ghana name was already attractive to and was articulating it as the future name for this country. Give him credit for that. Let nobody dare take that away or diminish his role.
Okay.
Of course, within the context of 48, too, don't forget, when the students went striking in favor of the Big Six after they had been arrested, there were disturbances in some of the Cape Coast schools. Nkrumah had to set up the Ghana National College, which of course is one of the point of differences between the UGCC leadership. They didn't support Nkrumah on that. But Nkrumah used the name Ghana National College. This was also 1948.
Okay.
So it was apparent that there was a broad agreement across the political divide that this name Ghana will be what we will use. Now check again what happened in Parliament. Nkrumah, before the House, let me read this. This is 12 November 1956, and this is Osajifo talking. He says in a speech in the Assembly on the 18th of May 1956, I said to the House, the government proposes that when the Gold Coast attains independence, the name of the country should be changed from Gold Coast to the name of Ghana. Nkrumah proceeded then to explain why, linking it to the West Ghana Empire, all those things, and said, it is from this rich historical background that the name Ghana has been proposed as the new name of Gold Coast upon the attainment of independence. We take pride in the name not only out of romanticism, but as an inspiration for the future. Now listen to what Nkrumah says here. He says, in fact, the choice of the name is typical of the government's search for reasonable compromises with the opposition. It is typical of the opposition to the whole of the constitutional discussion that they could not even bring themselves to agree to the very name which they themselves had employed politically and which had been popularized by some of their most distinguished members. It is typical of the opposition's attitude that they themselves could not be certain whether or not they did not want the name of Ghana. If they did not want Ghana, what other name they should have in this place? Should they have in their place? That's Nkrumah. But you see, this is where the key thing is. After all this,
and you try and wrap up on that note.
I'll do that. It's unfortunate. This thing.
I know.
We need more time.
I know. Yeah, I get it.
After all this, now.
And there are many, many people who want to be given the opportunity to call into this show and talk.
See, after all this, they now had to. The House had to go into a closed session, committee of the whole, to look at the articles by articles, each one on its own. Now listen to what happened when it came to
the clause.
Okay, if I can do this quickly, so that I don't forget the reasons you asked for. Arab Punsan on the if you go to 13th November, Arab Punsan said the opposition had on each occasion given very good reasons for being unable to take part in the constitutional talks. I refer to the invitation by the Prime Minister in December 1954 to the National Liberation Movement and the Ashanti Council. In the reply by these two bodies, it was pointed out that if the Prime Minister could withdraw what he said at the time he issued the invitation on public platforms and in the Assembly, those who advocated federation, that those who advocated federation were a few irresponsible minority and that they were enemies of the country, these two bodies would accept the invitation. So you see, their problem was that Nkrumah had described them as irresponsible and enemies of the nation.
Okay.
So their view was that Nkrumah should do a public retraction and apologize. Then they would have come to that meeting. I don't know if I don't accept that as a good reason. But to conclude, just for this point about the Ghana thing, you know, the name Ghana, where did I put this? I'm sorry. President mentioned Mr. Kobna Kesi. Now, this name Ghana, Kujobo to Akwaji, in all this Hansard, Hansard is the mirror of Parliament,
yes.
but it reflects the society and the real things. You can decide to interpret them anyhow you want, but the reality is that people will hear what you said, how you conducted yourself.
Right.
Now, Kujubutu had indicated that, look, we don't have much problems. We all accept Ghana. Akwaje said the same thing. All these years, we've all believed in that. Now it has come to the critical moment for Article 2. And this is what went on in Parliament. Article 1 to stand as part, and then it's Article 2. Change of name of the country from Gold Coast to Ghana. They were to deliberate on this, whether to accept or to reject. Then Mr. Mumuni Baumia comes in. He says, I move the following amendment. Delete all the words after B and insert the Gold Coast. I should like to explain the reason for the change. I think according to the white paper, it is clear that the 3 territorial councils were in favor that the name Gold Coast should still remain as the name of the country. It was only the government and the Transvolta Togoland Council that agreed that the name should be changed. In light of that argument, I advised the government to accept the amendment. Mr. Butsu comes in and said the opposition themselves are not agreed that the new name should not be adopted. In fact, the territorial councils were not strong on this point at all. I think that the Prime Minister in his opening speech gave very eloquent explanation as to why the name should be changed from Gold Coast to Ghana. And I think this House should adopt that name. The government is not prepared to accept the amendment. Then Mr. Korona, please, let me finish this. It's very important. Mr. Korona Kessi comes in and says, the opposition are now agreed that the name Gold Coast should remain. The Prime Minister did not give any tangible reason why the name should be changed to Ghana. All he said was that tradition connected this part of Africa with the name Ghana. What sort of tradition? He meant, I do not know. There is no tradition whatsoever connected with it. There are no linguistic or customary connections. We maintain that the name of Ghana is not suitable and that the Gold Coast is suitable enough. The last one, please, I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead, it's important.
Tampuri. He was also of the NPP. That's Nothing People's Party, to be precise. He says the new name of Ghana is not welcome by the whole country. I do not see what harm there is in associating gold with this country, since the country yields gold, which contributes to the revenue of the Gold Coast. Our gold mines have not yet ceased yielding gold, and therefore it is not necessary to stop calling our country Gold Coast. The name Gold Coast is known and highly honored everywhere. We must retain it. The last shot here is by the Prime Minister himself. I think we have belabored this point almost ad nauseam. I mean, you lawyers. The government is not prepared to accept the amendment. So question put and negative. Article 2, order to stand, part of the proposals. See?
Interesting.
So this inconsistency, this incoherence, this inclarity were the things that drove us towards March 6th. The opposition lost the historic initiative, which the CPP captured and consistently, in a very clear-cut manner, articulated. And that is why 6th March, you saw the CPP being those who declared independence. But it is not true that independence began between 47 and 57. It is not true. That's not factual. It began before 47, so many people played roles. I am prepared to acknowledge those who played the role. It's our history. You cannot do acknowledgement by omission or exclusion.
So you are with those who want the apostrophe to come after the S?
Well, good you asked. I am biased. I'm a CPP man. Here, it is my history that tells.
You want the apostrophe before the S?
I don't believe in instituting a day as a statutory public holiday for any individual as founder or founders. I don't believe in that. You see, that thing must come with consensus. Under Nkrumah, there was a Founders Day, September 21st. Then the First Republic, which was celebrated as a national day. Post-coup, it was cancelled. We've never had it till Professor Mills brought it in without consensus, without national in a consensus.
It doesn't look like there will be a consensus.
Yes, so why? That is why I'm saying. Then why waste your time having a particular day instituted? Why do you want to do that?
But if it is fair to history, why not?
why institute the day? March 6 is a look. Kwame Nkrumah doesn't need a Founders Day to be recognized. It's a global phenomenon.
Right.
He goes beyond March 6 at Ghana. He goes beyond Africa. It's a global phenomenon.
Right.
So for me, it was politically opportunistic when the decision was made to institute a particular day in his memory without even getting a national consensus behind. And that's why we are where we are today.
Right. So thank you very much. Well, we've got to take a break, but I think that we should just hear the Honorable Henry Kokofu before we take that break, so that when we return, we would only be dealing with the Western Togoland, our day. They don't want to say that. They just want to say it was they just wore T-shirts that said our day, 9th of March, my birthday, and that's all got them into arrested, and they don't like that. Yes. Okay.
Council.
Yeah.
When you have the big man Kweku.
You said you took an attorney in Kweku, so I thought you were going to say you defer to him.
Yes, I do, but with some kind of comments. You see, clearly, you cannot discount the contributions made by the earlier thinkers of
nationalists.
Yeah, nationalists. You read what in Nana's speech, the president's speech, a portion of it, and I want to quote here. He says, he was quoting Dr. J.B. Dankwa, and he said, and I quote, "Love of freedom from foreign control has always been in our blood. 870 years ago, we struck against the attempt of the Arabs to impose a religious slavery upon us in Ghana." Going back, just as Kweku said, he had done a great deal of investigations to come to the
I told you, when it comes to that question, he's more CPP than Ghanaian.
Exactly. But then this is a fact here by Dr. J.B. Dankwa has said. And he goes to what Prof was trying to say about social, those were the social issues. And it can never be decoupled. Social issues and all other things culminates in political self-determination, self-control, controlling, taking yourself out of the foreign control that J.B. Dankwa had dreamt of during those days. So now the apostrophe and not the apostrophe.
You can clamor for some social equity,
yes,
and still prefer to live under the colonial master. That is not part of self-determination or political struggle.
No.
Yeah, but you see the consciousness, these struggles actually bring up people's consciousness.
That's exactly. Right. And self-determination will be the best thing for you to have.
Okay.
And you see, the Kweku may help me here. Has CPP gotten the present day CPP? We know the original CPP, Kwame Nkrumah founded it. The present CPP, you have founding fathers or a founder?
Oh, please.
And then the NDC, I'm coming. Do we have a founding father?
It is
exactly.
So the original CPP.
You proscribed it, and it was revived.
So President Nkrumah founded this present day CPP.
He's our founder.
He's your founder?
Yeah.
Okay. Then the NDC.
We have a founder.
A founder?
Yes.
And do you remember you just said you have founders. You don't have a founder?
No, I didn't say that.
No, it's not you. It's not you. That is what your members have said. That after all, Jerry John Rawlings, the former president, is not a founder. He's part of the founders.
But that's a fact of their constitution that those who say cannot raise it. So forget about those supporters.
Street talk. Okay. So clearly, we by the account of Kweku and all others, have clearly showed that we had people who really had the struggle in mind long before.
Yeah, but he gets to the crucial points, the crucial moments, when the opposition was needed the most.
Yeah,
that is where they failed to shine.
And that
he talks about the inconsistencies.
The mere fact,
he's got three expressions for that.
The mere fact that you cannot
inclarity.
The mere fact that
incoherence.
The mere fact that you cannot feel strongly the taste of the salt does not mean there's no salt in the soup.
Thank you very much.
There's a salt in there.
Thank you very much.
Can I make a
30 seconds?
Yes.
Yeah.
You see, apart from boycotting the motion of destiny, they also sent a petition. The three political parties, they sent a petition to the British Parliament saying that we were not ready for several, and that Transvolta Togoland, the Northern Territories, and Ashanti, they wanted a separate state for themselves. You see,
Could you refer to that issue on the debate of whether we wanted to be unitary or we were not?
The federalism.
You didn't just boycott. You were saying that.
But at the end of the day,
so you.
Okay. Thank you very much. We'll take a break. When we return, I'll share some of your views with you, and then we'll answer the question that I asked earlier about those who have been charged for treason. And the question is very simple: whether or not they should succeed or succeed only in jail. We'll be right back.